Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. That, of course, is the main man, Greg. I'm Buck Reising. If you're new to the podcast, hello. We're happy to have you. We've got OTAs on the docket here in the next couple of days. And in fact, we got the opportunity, Greg, to speak with some of the veteran players for the first time this offseason program. Tony Pollard, Chigakonkwo, and obviously everybody being asked questions about the new presumptive quarterback one, even though Brian Callahan is slow playing that a little bit. You have to keep up at least the guise of competition, and that's what the NFL is at every level. So we are looking forward to learning more about this team. And today we're also going to take a look at the division, the AFC South, because it's a lot of different things that are happening in every division at this time of year. But in particular, this one, as you, I think, described the Titans Broncos game last week, is a petri dish game. This is a petri dish division, I feel, at this point in time, with a lot of fascinating pieces and parts.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the team we know about is Houston, but Jacksonville and Indy are teams we really don't necessarily know what they're going to be until we kind of get to the season.
Yeah.
And I guess they don't play their first division game. Is it until week 4? I believe it is somewhere around there, week 3 or 4.
For Tennessee, it's week 3 at home against Indianapolis.
There you go. Yeah, I knew it wasn't the first 2 weeks. So I mean, you just don't know. We don't even know who the starting quarterback will be for Indy. And with Liam Cohen in Jacksonville now, I mean that's a whole new offense, and that'll be very interesting to see how quickly Trevor Lawrence, and not just Trevor Lawrence, but the receivers, the way they run block. It's a whole new offense.
Well, and even Houston without Bobby Slowick this year is going to have a little bit of a different flavor, as they made a change at the offensive coordinator position there, and moving around some offensive line parts, trying to get that unit back up to par. So it's still pretty in flux across the board, even though, as you mentioned, Houston is the team to beat at this point in time. We did talk a lot about the offensive side of the ball when we did the live show, obviously with Coach Callahan, Greg. But there are other draft picks that I want to get your thoughts on. In particular, the 2 guys that they picked on day 2, both defensive players, in Femi Oladejo, the converted off-ball linebacker who's going to be an edge at the next level, and Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State, who missed last year, but is thought very, very highly of prior to the injury, and expects to be a contributor, provided that he can get up to speed for training camp, and that's kind of where they feel his progress is right now. But let's start with Oladejo, Greg, and the process that it is going to be for him to move from one position to another, where he started that in the midst of last season, and there's reason to believe that he'll have success on the edge. God knows the Titans need it.
Yeah, I think he's an ascending player. That's what I felt when I watched his tape, because he did make that change from being a stacked backer in 2023 and through the first 2 or 3 games of 2024 at UCLA, and then moved predominantly, the high percentage of his snaps came as an edge player. I mean, this guy, you've probably seen him in person. He's chiseled. He looks like Tarzan. He's got power to his game. I think when you're an edge, it always starts with that. You have to be able to win with power. I think that he's still learning. But to me, and again, not just because Tennessee drafted him, this is what I felt when I watched the tape, that he's a player that's just going to continue to get better and better and better. And I don't know where he stands in his development. Maybe he's not ready to play week 1, to play 50 snaps. We don't know that right now, but I think he's going to be a really good edge player as time goes on.
And certainly they need it with the absence of Harold Landry. And Harold, maybe not at the peak of his powers at this point in his career, but this was one of the worst units in football a year ago at disrupting the quarterback, dealing with some injuries, dealing with a variety of different things. So fair to expect Femi is going to have a role right away, just how substantive to your point.
I think the fascinating player, and we'll get to Winston in 1 second, but I think the fascinating player in all of this, and I don't know how much you spend time talking about him when you do your show, and people might not even know much about him because he's not a big name, is Draymond Jones. Because Draymond Jones came out of Ohio State a number of years ago. He was a pass rusher. Okay. In the league, he's played inside, he's played outside. My guess is Tennessee sees him as an outside backer, a stand-up outside backer in their base 5-2 front, and he can rush the quarterback. So he, to me, is until Femi Oladeju kind of gets his feet wet, unless he just blows up right away and is unbelievable. I think Jones is a really important player, and I can't remember if we discussed him when they signed him. I'm sure we did to some degree, but that was a while back. But this kid can rush the quarterback. That's always been the thing he does best.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a prove it deal here for him. It's 1 year, 10 mil. So this is an
Right,
established player that's
right,
coming in
right,
here with the expectation to start and for his purposes, hopefully cash in, whether it's in
right.
Tennessee or somewhere else after the fact. But they have high expectations of Draymond Jones for certain. And then to Kevin Winston Jr., where the secondary is in flux. Greg, this isn't important for the purposes of your and my conversation as far as the X's and O's goes, but there's a legal situation revolving around L'Jarius Sneed. So the secondary is a question mark at this point in time.
Right.
But they added Kevin Winston Jr. Amani Hooker is still there, still a high level player. They brought in Xavier Woods from Carolina, as we talked about in free agency, and again the injury with Winston Jr. We'll see how quickly he can make an impact. But I mean, just to look at him physically, Greg, and to go back and watch him in 2023, there's no question that this is somebody who belongs at the NFL level.
Oh, there's no question. I talked to some defensive back coaches through the draft process who really love this kid. And the sense I got, and I don't think like this when I watch players. And by the way, I really liked his tape. I watched him last summer, probably 7 or 8 games from 2023, and obviously then I watched the one game he played in its entirety this year, week one against West Virginia. And he was very, very good, by the way. But this kid would have been an All-American type player this year. He's big, he can run, he's physical, he plays downhill, he's willing to hit, he can cover. I mean, in many ways, he's a complete safety. So we'll see how it all plays out. I thought the Woods signing was really good. Get a veteran safety in there who is just a solid pro. That's what Hooker is as well. But Winston, the sense I got is that if he was healthy and played a full season, he would have been a late first round pick, at worst, an early second round pick.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a really good pick. I don't know what his physical status is at this point. You probably know that better than I, being there. But a healthy Kevin Winston, at some point, he's going to be starting at safety for Tennessee.
Yeah, they described him as limited as we begin rookie camp, or as we've gone through rookie camp and now into the voluntary stuff. But they fully expect him to be.
I'm limited every day, so I don't know what that means.
I don't know. I don't know, Greg. You when I saw you for the live show, you looked like you dropped a few. I think less and less
I
limited.
did. I did. I appreciate that. Yeah.
They must have got, everybody's going through training camp or getting ready for training camp.
I'm going through my off-season program. I'm going through my OTAs.
That's right. Not voluntary for us, maybe voluntary for them.
Right, exactly.
But as we look at the rest of the division, Greg, because as you know, again, Houston will be favored, understandably so. They have the most. It's such a fascinating discussion between C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence had the pedigree, right? And he has had. There are reasons that he has struggled beyond his own situation, beyond stuff that's specifically under his control. But he's also underperformed, especially now that he's on a second contract. Let's start with Houston first, though. And we understand what is there on both sides of the ball. They seem to have added every person in the draft named either Jaden or Jalen throughout the course of this, with Jaden Higgins being their first draft pick. He wasn't a first rounder. They traded back this year into the top of the second round. But Jaden Higgins, who comes in from Iowa State, they continue to add wide receiver depth, even though that's not necessarily an area of need for them, with Jalen Noel also of Iowa State. And then a pick that I really liked for them is Ariante Ursery, the Minnesota tackle, given that they traded Laramie Tunsil to Washington this offseason as they try and reset the board, both from a personnel standpoint and a cultural standpoint. How did you feel about what the Houston Texans added to an already established roster?
Well, I love Jaden Higgins. I watched him last summer from 2023, and I knew nothing about him because he was an Eastern Kentucky transfer. And obviously, I'm not on top of Eastern Kentucky's players. And I came away last summer thinking, this guy's really, really good. I'm very anxious to see him in 2024. And he was the same guy. And I loved him, and his teammate Jalen Noel is a very intriguing guy as well. They're totally different players, obviously. They did sign Christian Kirk, who's coming off. He's had some injuries the last couple of years. That's a question mark. I remember loving John Mechie in college, but
Mm.
he's unfortunately had that major injury. So we'll see how all this plays out. But you made a great point when we started. I think they felt like they needed to upgrade their O line, which was not very good last year. And even though they made it to the second round of the playoffs, I thought Stroud last year was not quite as clean and efficient as he was as a rookie. He felt the pressure a little bit, and that's something he's got to work through because, as you know, if you're a pocket quarterback in the NFL, you have to be able to function in squeezed and muddy pockets. And I thought, because he didn't get many of those in college, and he didn't get many of them, believe it or not, in his rookie season. And I think last year was really the first time where he kind of had to deal with the fact that, wow, there's a lot of people around me. And at times he started to speed up his game. And he was still efficient, still effective, but I think that was a good learning process for him. We'll see. Cam Robinson, I'm sure, will end up being the starting left tackle. They signed him, but they're counting on some young players to just keep getting better. I mean, they didn't really change much about their O line. Sometimes that's what teams do, and there's nothing wrong with that. You draft guys, that's why you draft them. Blake Fisher, second round pick from Notre Dame. He played a lot last year. He was up and down. They're expecting him to get better. Second round pick, you got to play him. Patterson, another guy. He's a young guy too. I mean, he came out in the draft in 2023 as well. Juice Scruggs. I mean, these are guys that they drafted. Scruggs was a second round pick. You have to play these guys at some point, and you just keep coaching them, and then you hope they just keep getting better. So we'll see. That to me is a little bit of a work in progress right now.
Yeah, and certainly that was as responsible, or at least from the untrained eye, Greg. It seemed that was as responsible for any kind of theoretical sophomore slump that C.J. Stroud experienced.
Yeah, everything seemed a little faster for him.
Yeah,
Look, you and I have not dropped back and played quarterback in the NFL, but the reality is when there's people really close to you and they're fast and they weigh 280, 290 pounds, and it's just human nature. You speed up a little bit. And he just did that last year. And not to the point where he couldn't play. It's not like he had a bad year where you go, oh my God, this guy's really, but I mean, there were just clearly snaps, reps, games where he just played a little faster.
yeah,
I'm curious to see Joe Mixon. He's getting older. He's had in his own way, he's had a great career. And, people don't really talk about him like that. I mean, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer necessarily, but I mean, he's had a really good career. But he is getting older. He doesn't quite have the same juice that he had. It'll be interesting to see. They did draft that back from USC, who was actually a huge recruit when he initially started at Mississippi State. Woody Marks. We'll see if he gets snaps because he's a more explosive guy.
yeah. An interesting draft pick, and there were many interesting picks along the way for throughout the course of this draft. But Graham Mertz, the Florida quarterback who blew out his knee last year in the
Yes.
sixth round, was an addition that we'll see what becomes of that. But that was
Well,
just one that piqued my interest.
just a
If
quick aside, I got a chance about 4 or 5 years ago at an event to spend a lot of time with Graham Mertz. He is an unbelievable kid. When you talk to him, you feel like this guy's a quarterback. Now, of course, he had the great start at Wisconsin, then transferred to Florida, where he did well, and then tore his knee up. I got a chance on the floor of the combine to kind of reconnect with him and talk to him. And he's not going to be the starting quarterback, obviously. That's just this is just kind of a quick anecdotal aside. But if you ever talk to him, you'd come away thinking that guy's a quarterback. He
yeah.
just has that whole manner about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we continue on looking at the AFC South and the teams that reside in it, Indianapolis, as you mentioned, it's a fascinating situation with Daniel Jones coming in at quarterback this year. We are not sure what is going to become of Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things in flux, frankly, in Indianapolis. The unfortunate passing, this is not a football related thing necessarily, but the unfortunate passing of Jim Irsay late
Yes.
yesterday evening will have ripple effects, though not necessarily for the upcoming season. One would imagine, but that is going to be a curious thing to see who ends up running that organization and what that means for guys like Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen.
I'll tell you
But
what's interesting about Indy, if I could,
please,
is because of the Richardson situation, everybody focuses on that. And obviously that's a huge, huge story. The guy was the fourth pick in the draft and just hasn't really, developed yet through 2 years. But they've got really good skill players. I mean, and that's not really talked about. I mean, they've got, they drafted Tyler Warren, okay? They've got Josh Downs, they've got Pittman, they've got Pierce. They've got AJ Mitchell, who has tremendous talent, and I think had to understand what being a pro was in his rookie season. I don't think he figured that out, and we'll see if he figures it out now. But he's super gifted, as you know. And they've got Jonathan Taylor. I mean, and Taylor, in his own way, last year had an unbelievable season that probably flew under the radar, Buck. I mean, not a lot of people, I think, were aware of what this guy did over the last 7, 8 weeks of the season. Um, and of course, it was a couple of years ago when he had that ridiculous year and led them to the playoffs. So, I mean, they've got really good skill players. Obviously, if the quarterback can't function at a high level, it brings everything down. But we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, Daniel Jones, I'm really curious to see what happens with him because I always thought Daniel Jones, I'm not saying he could be a top five quarterback in the league, but I thought you could line up and play with Daniel Jones. And we'll see if this is the situation that presents itself as such.
yeah, he could be the next quarterback that we're talking about in these rehabilitated career
Yeah.
rehabilitation
Yeah.
cycle that we have. And they also have a fascinating defensive front, Greg. We know that they drafted Latu last year in the first round. They added JT, and forgive me if I botch this, but Tua Molau out of Ohio State, the edge rusher in the second round, who I really
Yes.
liked, and given that the Titans had a needed edge, was paying fairly close attention to. You've got Lou Anarumo coming over from Cincinnati too, as far as the deployment of that front. It's going to be a problem for opposing quarterbacks this year because I don't think Lou's lost his fastball. I think their personnel just dipped in Cincinnati.
Yeah, yeah, they've got an interesting front. I mean, again, they've got Zaire Franklin, who for 2 or 3 years has been among the league leaders in tackles, just a solid pro. It just shows you he was a seventh round pick, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, when he came out. But yeah, they've got an interesting front. They've got still have DeForest Buckner, who's a really good player, Grover Stewart. I mean, they've got a really good front. They had some changes on the back end. They'll have Cam Bynum came over from Minnesota. He's a solid player. Javarius Ward came over from San Francisco. He had the personal tragedy a year ago with his family, so it was kind of a lost year for him. But at his best, if he still can play at his best, he's a good corner. So this could be a pretty good defense.
As far as the final team in this division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, we understand the premium that they paid to come up and get Travis Hunter, which it sounds like he's going to major in offense and minor in defense. How much that minor results in an actual snap count on defense remains to be seen, of course. But that was the highlight of their draft. A couple of different players here that Jacksonville added that I love, including Jack Kaiser, the linebacker out of Notre Dame, and Basil Tootin, the running back from Virginia Tech, who's just an absolute burner, Greg. I'm sure you
Yeah.
watched him a good deal. Jacksonville, of course, goes as Trevor Lawrence does, and that's what they're hoping Liam Cohen can come in here and do what he did for guys like Will Levis at the college level, Baker Mayfield, obviously, in his most recent stop in Tampa Bay. But as you look at the Jags draft, how does that kind of align with the direction that they're heading? Because they should be competing with the
Yeah.
Texans at the top of this division.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Liam Cohen thing is really interesting here because obviously his background is with the Rams. Um, obviously did a great job in Tampa, but I mean, you're going to see a different offense, a lot of reduced splits. You're going to see a lot of motion. I think Travis Hunter fits that beautifully because what are you trying to do in his offense? We saw it with someone like Puka Nakua. Not that he was with the Rams last year, but it's the same concept of getting the ball to a guy who has really good run after catch. Nakua and Hunter are totally different players, obviously, in their style, but you want to get the ball to a Travis Hunter with space and room to run after catch. This style of offense does that. And we saw what Brian Thomas did as a rookie a year ago. So, that's, we know what he is. we'll see. At receiver, they're counting on Hunter to be a major part, and I think he does fit this offense really, really well with his skill set.
Well, that's going to do it for us for the AFC South. When we get back together, we'll talk about the NFC South and we'll work our way through these divisions as we talk about what teams did in the offseason to get ready for another NFL season. And obviously, we'll keep you updated with the latest OTA news. Titans back on the practice field next week in a way that's open for us to watch. And Greg, in fact, is coming down for mandatory minicamp. So we'll look forward to potentially doing another podcast in person as long as your schedule allows for it, Greg.
Absolutely.
And always good to catch up with you, my brother. Thanks for doing it.
All right, Buck. Appreciate it. That was fun. Thanks.